Well, facilities are last, and that's appropriate, where they should be in the chain of discussion. That obviously you need to talk about education first, and you need to talk about partnerships and bringing together, people to maximize the benefits for students, and you also need to talk about specialization, specialties, and unique things about your community to make sense. And so then and only then can you talk about your facilities, and a lot of your facilities have been built. It's really how to use them better, and also what's missing today, to make your environment better to support kids. So what I've done is I put together a number of examples. Many of these are our projects that we've worked on, but I've also brought in some other architects and other experiences from around the country that we'd like to share with you that might spark an idea about a space that you currently have or a space that you'd like to have in the future. But before that, I want to share with you a little video that actually I think I was probably about in junior high school when this TV program came about. One of the exciting things for us as architects is to think about how things are going to be in the future. And this was sort of my vision as a elementary student, as the way things might be. I think sometime in third grade I figured out I'd be 48 in the year 2000, so you can figure out how old I am now. And I thought, gosh, I'm going to be old, but I thought about 2000 and what that would mean, and I think this little video clip sort of epitomizes that. So. Hopefully there's some sound in there somewhere. Yeah. And there's the school of the future I was dreaming about, and then also Orbit High School. I mean, all of our high schools look like that now. Now, I don't relate too much to those schools because we haven't developed those school designs like that. But I do relate to the last shot there with my wife, and so. All right. Well, we can go back to the PowerPoint. So, it's just sort of as a youngster, you dream about how things might be in the future, and now here today, we're dreaming about how things might be in the future in El Monte, and how you can really develop those resources within your community. I think one of the things that we can all be sure about is that the needs of children are different than they were when we were youngsters, and it really does make a major difference in how we look at things. That kids are engaged in different ways of exploring the world than we were, and the technologies they're using and all those things. And I often think about the businesses that we're preparing our students to work in, and think about how those businesses are designed and how different they are from our schools. A lot of the high-tech industries now are creating these very comfortable settings that are recreational, that are comfortable and easy places to be. And maybe our schools should be a little more like that. I just went into a classroom out in Lake Elsinore. Rachel and I have been walking all their schools, helping them with a primarily facility-oriented master plan. And one of the teachers, actually the classroom was filled with sofas. And these were all hand-me-down sofas that I think he had gotten from parents. There were no tables in the room. It was just a bunch of sofas that the kids sat at, which I would, the facilities person sort of raised her eyeballs as we went in there. But it was, an interesting idea, and they had murals all over the walls, and obviously this teacher was very committed and dedicated. So I mean, these are the work environments that people are working in today, with the foosball in the lunch area and comfortable chairs and meetings held out in a gathering area and storyboards in the areas. And maybe we can think about as schools become more like where Elliot shares with us with his students have internships where they spend a couple days a week out of school. This is what we call a hoteling office, where these people don't have a dedicated space. They have a little carousel that they keep all their stuff in, and then they come and they use a table. So they don't really have a dedicated classroom, if you will, or office. They just come and they use that space. So how do we think about environments? And I think the main thing is that you need to have a dialogue about learning in order to design a learning environment. And this is an example of a middle school cluster that came out of the idea from teachers that they wanted to be teamed together. And we had designed another school, actually this happens to be work we did with Dr. Eagle, where we had two teams together in a larger cluster, and it was a little impersonal. And so the teachers, when we designed the second school, they said, well, can we make this so we have our own sort of space? And so English, history, math, and science teachers are all grouped together. And they also said, we want our classrooms bigger. And the budget said, Chris was there too, and he said, no, you can't afford bigger classrooms. But what we could do is we could widen the hallway a little bit, and we could put garage doors on the classrooms so that when the teachers wanted to collaborate, they could spill out into that space and use it for a large group work or small group work with technology and all those things. So my point is just to sort of think about learning. It's another example, which may be a very strange idea to you, but in this case, we combine the media center, the shops, the cooking lab, and the technology center all in one space. And it's really neat to walk in. This is a team-taught classroom. There's two teachers in this area, and it's so cool to walk in there and see boys sewing things and girls building things, and they're doing this all together. And it's I can understand why you're a little bored sitting here in a room all day listening to. I mean, if you could be in a space like this, working with your kids, hands-on, and bringing these opportunities to them, I mean, that's obviously a very engaging space to be with your kids. And I think that's the main role that architecture can play in school design. Is it can grab, a lot of the things we've talked about, experiential, hands-on type things, that the environment can play a role in that, and hopefully, as I talked about earlier, that school welcoming you, but when you come in the door, that it's a place that says something about education, and it's a place for kids. It's not an institution, and it's not a prison, but it's a place where learning is going on, and there's opportunities for students to participate in that, and also contribute to that through their work, their artwork, their projects, their presentations. Can be very simple. This is many of you are probably familiar with the Reggio Emilia schools in Italy. Very simple thing where they have these old type window shades, and they use lights, and students are studying, as Rick mentioned earlier. They're studying complex issues about perspective and shadow and all those things because they don't know enough to not know that they shouldn't know what they're knowing. And there's all sorts of opportunities to do that within the environment. A sidewalk can become a sundial. It can become a distance and meters and feet, just so students have an understanding of that. In this case, this was a school for kids, a community school, where the kids were, they didn't sit in rows very well. Matter of fact, they lost kids when they went to the restroom in their previous facility. Kids would go to the restroom, they would smoke, and then they'd take off. And so we came up with a rather unique idea. We had done it actually in elementary schools in Aurora. We put a restroom in each classroom there. The students that were involved in designing the community school said that was a little too personal for them. They didn't want the restroom right off their classroom. But we did provide one restroom for each classroom right outside the door. So the teacher could watch the student go to the restroom and watch them come back. And vandalism was really reduced by that idea. And the building itself can be a teaching tool. The mechanical systems, the structural systems, the opening up the walls. I think a lot of the things that we've talked about, experiential. There's so many lessons in all these systems that we have. Not only, as Rick mentioned, the games that students play, but the building itself can be a teaching tool in that regard. And hopefully it should be something that's aesthetically pleasing, like so many of your schools are. I mean, I'm really impressed with the front door presence of your schools, that they really do have something that they're contributing to the community, and I think it's a good place to be. It's also thinking about old schools and how they can be used differently. This is a finger school plan that Rachel and I worked on up in the Oakland area. And this school district wanted to do something with their school to give students a better chance to succeed. So they broke the school up into small learning communities, and we took this old finger plan and made the entrances into the small learning community through these areas, and sort of closed off the covered walkway in between and created outdoor walkways and made this courtyard part of the small learning community. And so it sort of changed the relationship of the building, and then allowed them to use this double-loaded corridor as pull-out space. So it would be a resource where they could work in small groups. So it's just taking that space and using it differently. And I think those are some of the things that we can talk about in your schools, taking that same space you have and maybe using it differently. Now, just to change the tone a little bit and talk about maybe some of the resources and things that you can do with schools to have them provide an opportunity for students to be engaged. This is a school that was built on an old farm piece of property, and it's still agriculture all around, but they're losing their farmland, and they're losing it at a fairly rapid pace. And so, as time goes on, they want the students to remember that history and that heritage. So the whole design of the school was based upon this sort of agricultural theme. You can sort of see in the architecture, it looks sort of like a barn. And we called this space the barn inside. That's a space where all those middle school kids sort of circulate through. And a lot of their resources, the media center, the technology center, is all sort of circulating off the barn. So it makes it very accessible. And then we built some little interactive displays that talked about architecture and science and technology as part of the campus. So when even when you're walking down the hallways, you have an opportunity to be learning. And the kids are building a timeline on one side of the hallway. There's a timeline of key events in ancient history. The Magna Carta, the Egyptians built the pyramids, and all these sort of little milestones. And then the kids are building half of that, so the 8th grade class gets to design a little tile that's set in the floor, and so the history of their school goes out. And we built in about 100 years into there, and so we'll see how that develops over time. Up in Northern California, in the mining community, this school was designed with a mining theme. The elevator was designed like a mine shaft. You can see into it, so it's plays a role there. And then the courtyards are designed like mining country with maps that the students developed, and then we built into the sidewalks and those areas. The counseling area is not part of the office. It's a separate space, but it's sort of like you're walking down into a mine as you go into the counseling area. And then Rick shared with you, other opportunities to have that heritage within your schools and campuses. And it can be fairly simple things. This is one of my favorite schools in Winnetka, Illinois, the Crow Island Elementary School. And down in their basement, they took an old sort of dilapidated space, and some teacher had an idea to create this Pioneer Center. And it's sort of the culminating opportunity that you have as a 6th grader in their school. Each group of students gets to live like a pioneer would have for a week in their 6th grade year. And they dress up, they have all sorts of things that you can wear. And this has been going on for quite some time. They've been doing this for quite some time. They make candles, they eat all their meals there, they prepare their meals in the school. And they get this experience, not only just reading about what it's like to be a pioneer, but actually living that experience. And we did our own California version with the Wiki Up, which the students build every year. And this courtyard, again, students have an opportunity to live like a Native American would have in Rancho Cucamonga many, many years ago. It's also interesting to see the artifacts, and again, this is back in Aurora, Lincoln Elementary School, but this was a school that was built in 1880, and it's interesting in some of the security that was, that we all sort of addressed in the 80s and 90s. This school was the entry for the school was changed from the front to the side, so it was by the parking lot. And they buzz everyone into the school just so that somebody's not coming into the school, so it's a very secure environment. However, it really sort of destroyed. It had this nice sort of grand front entry, and so we came up with the idea of putting a circular drive back in front of the school, and then so you enter through the school. But then as we were doing the renovation, we found up in the attic these old cabinets from probably when the school was built in the 1880s. And then there was also a bunch of memorabilia up here. There was a crosswalk attendant that had been there for like 40 years, and they had celebrated his career, but all this stuff was sort of up there in the attic, and so this was now, we created this display in the principal's office, so everyone that comes to the school has a sense of that heritage and history of the school, and the students, I think, have a better opportunity to learn through that experience. And you can create that history in new schools, by paying attention to the natural environment. This is a very simple thing. This is Daltile has all this computerized now, and this is the Sutter Buttes up in Yuba City, and it's done in 1-by-1 tile, but it's all done by the computer. You send them a picture, and they make it up, and it really doesn't cost much more than just putting tile on. There's a little upcharge for that, but it gives the school a real sense of the area that it's in. This was a mural designed by the students, and this is a one high school district where the students all come together at the one school, and it's a real unifying force for the school district. And this was an idea that the students came up with for a mural to show all the students of their various ethnic backgrounds and various neighborhoods and various schools, how they come together to be unified at the high school. We've talked a lot about students being interested in real work and having an opportunity to do real things and to make a contribution. And I know when you've been able to engage your students in those types of activities, that's something that really excites them. Rick shared with you the work the students are doing in reforesting the desert and the work that they're doing with the Tui Chub. But there's also an opportunity. El Monte was one of the prime agricultural areas in the world. This valley, the San Gabriel Valley, is actually a richer agricultural area than the Central Valley as far as the history and the quality of the soil. Most of it's pretty much developed, but there are opportunities, and I think students are really interested in the environment, and so maybe there's a place, a small corner that you could carve out to have your own preservation of natural history or natural environment. And the buildings can also teach about stewardship of the environment. I think buildings today are designed much more energy efficiently, and I know that was a big aspect of the work that you've recently done. And so how can that building actually share that stewardship, share that with your students as you move forward? Now, I'd like to share with you a couple of other examples of facilities sort of similar to Rick's campus and that have sort of a dedicated theme for their schools. And this is probably one of the first small high school. It's the Zoo School, and it's a collaboration. I think it's 12 different school districts in the Minneapolis area, and the campus is actually, this is the Minnesota Zoo, and the school is right on that campus, and the zoological staff are actually teachers in the school, and the kids, they're working with those lions in the headlights out at the zoo. And so these are students that are interested in the environment, environmental studies, and they have a fairly unique schedule. The students actually go off and do work. I mean, one of the students went up and lived in the wilderness for 2 weeks on their vacation up in the northern parts of Minnesota, and they do a lot of different things. They're studying on the environment. But you can see that this is a very different environment. I mean, the students are grouped in groups of 5 and clustered in groups of 20, which would be sort of a classroom, and then they're grouped in a group of 100. So it's a very different learning environment where they have a lot of control over their own space, and they do a lot of things. One of the interesting things, we walk through the school, and there's iPods and computers and all sorts of personal stuff out there, and the principal told us that they had never had anything stolen there at that site. And I think a big reason for that is it's a very small school, like some of yours are, but there's 400 kids there, and they all know each other, and they're all sort of gathered together in this large space, and they have this real respect for each other and the things that they do. This school, again, is back in Aurora, and this was a replacement school, and they had a very strong performing arts program. So they felt that they wanted to have the school designs reinforce that, and so one of the ways that we did that, as you walk into the school, there's the 2-sided stage. Actually, the stage opens up here, and then it also opens up in the multi-purpose building. And so as you walk into the school, there's a stage. And then there's also we just widened the stair a little bit to create a little amphitheater, and thought that they might do different plays and things that they could do and build the stair into that. And then the music and art classes, and I think they still have music and art in Illinois. So those classes are still, they're right there, somewhat of a focus. And they also wanted us to build in a sound system where they could play classical music or hip-hop music, as the case may be, in the clusters. And then one of the things that was also exciting, the kids actually came up with some graphics for each of the clusters that would go as sort of an entryway into their classroom cluster that would talk about each of the performing arts areas that they might have an interest in. This school is one of my favorite schools. It's located back in Yonkers, New York, and it's a micro-society school, and it's in a very, very tough area. The school was built on the site of an old crack house that was torn down, purchased by the city, and they call it a micro-society school. And this is their town square. Their classrooms are grouped around the town square. They have their citizens court. They have a post office. They have their sort of town square where they have their the kids build things and sell things. There they earn money. Interesting thing is the citizens court is actually, if you get in trouble, you go to citizens court and you pick one of your friends to be your attorney, and there's a jury of your peers, and they meet out. And so if you pick one of your friends that's not too committed to school, you probably end up getting a little harsher penalty than you would otherwise. But when I was there, I mean, the kids, actually the principal had his face on the dollar bill for the school. But it's, the kids were really into it. I mean, they were excited about it, and they really worked it into their community. They go from their bank to the local bank, and they do a lot of math and a lot of hands-on things where they earn their dollars, and they can spend them on crafts that other students students create in the school. A little closer to home, this is a project out in Flabob Airport out in Harupa in the Riverside area. And this is a school that's all focused on aviation. There's so obviously a connection with El Monte Airport, but this is there's a law statewide that you can't locate a school within 2 miles of an airport, and we've actually put this school on an airport site and got sort of some special dispensation, but it's there's a very safe area on a airport site that is sort of the zone of safety, and we located the school in that area. But it's really interesting. I mean, these kids are really interested, and they're focused on the opportunity to learn through aviation. One of the things in Learn by Doing, these students, they rebuilt an old plane. And anyone familiar with Oshkosh, Wisconsin? They have this big fly-in. I think it's the busiest airport for 1 week out of the year in the world, because there's all these private planes that are flying in, and they have a big air show and all those things. So these students in Riverside, they rebuilt this plane, and 3 of the kids and their instructor flew back from California back to Oshkosh. So they really trusted the work that they did in flying that plane. And then Rick's already shared with you a lot about what they do, but I visited that campus, and it's really quite amazing to see how committed those kids are and how engaged in what they do. And again, doing real work. I think that these kids feel really like they're making a contribution, and they're already doing things that are making a difference in the world in major ways. And there's a number of examples of universities and community colleges and cities and different entities working together. I just wanted to share with you this sort of somewhat of a unique idea. Like Sherry mentioned, the first school to contact Starbucks, this school contacted Kinko's, and they have a Kinko's for Kids within their school. They do all the copying in the school. This is actually in a high school. But then they also do copying for local businesses. They have a side door where people come in and they run copies and sort of run their own business on the campus. Sherry mentioned the community technology centers, but that's a place that's open for parents to come in. It's open for kids. So Dr. Key would have a place to come and do his homework and write his paper, in that community. But it's also a place for, in our group, a number of times it was mentioned that it's hard to really reach kids when parents don't have a job, and so if there's an opportunity within the community to also make a connection with those parents to provide additional skills for them that are going to help them out, obviously that's a much more unified community that will occur in that regard. And then moving schools out into the community. You're probably familiar, Pomona Unified, they purchased a portion of the old mall there at Indian Hill and have moved their school into that, so sort of moving the school into the community versus the community into the school. And then just lastly, I wanted to share this because a number of principals talked about the need for services for kids and services for parents, and this school is a really unique school built up in San Francisco. It's built in the Tenderloin area, which is probably one of the poorest, crime-ridden places in San Francisco. And it was actually, there were 2 women that were really committed to children, and they worked for about 10 years to get this school built. And I think they would say that it was worth it. But this school is not just a school, it's a community center, and it's a hub for services. And the whole basement of the school is a dental office and a health office and financial counseling and social services and a number of services. And they found that their students and students' parents needed these services within their building, and they found that many people in their community wouldn't access those services, and if they had to go to the county office or the social services office and all the the red tape and also the sort of pain and suffering that goes through going to a place like that very publicly and asking for help, that they felt much more comfortable in a school setting to ask those questions. And then just a couple more pictures of the Collaborative Center that Sherry shared with you earlier. So just lastly, I just wanted to go through your schools one more time to remind you of some of the potential partnerships and some of the potential spaces that you have and the resources that you have within your existing schools, and some of those spaces like the shop spaces at Rio Hondo, and I mentioned earlier the child development spaces in the community, the early childhood education services that you provide, which are amazing, and there's a lot of committed people in that. But are there other things? Is that place in the right location? Could that even be better? Because I think that's a really critical piece to your success is getting to kids early and making a difference for them early on. And then the resources, the airport and all the businesses that are out in that area. We talked a lot about the school that was closed in that area, the Moho, that's now the Moho Training Center. Maybe that would be a potential for some collaboration with the airport and providing an opportunity for students that might be interested in aviation in some way. It's not that they're going to be pilots or mechanics or any of those things, but if that could hook them into being more focused in education, that would be a great thing. As I mentioned, the street presence of your schools and the resources, some of the libraries that you have are really amazing, and some of the support spaces, and even small little courtyards that are pleasant spaces to sit in and study and take advantage of. I think all your schools seem like they're very proud of the places that they are, and they're well taken care of. Obviously, there's still some things that need to be done throughout the campuses, and I know Durfee's scheduled for some new projects, but that special education center there that's on the Durfee campus, how could that be used to maximize resources that you have? I talked earlier about Gidley, what a pleasant space that is, and the music and the programs that could happen in that area are pretty commendable. And it could be something that students from other schools could go and take advantage of, maybe after school or maybe even during school. And then we've talked about Longo Honda a number of times. And the resources that are there, and the new buildings that you built are truly amazing spaces throughout the district, and New Lexington. I think New Lexington needs a little less institutional front for the school, like many of your other campuses are. But it's interesting. Even there's some old resources that maybe could be re-engaged. These are actually, and these were done in the 50s, I think. These are actually sliding doors that open to the outside that don't open anymore. But wouldn't it be great to, if the teachers thought that was a great idea, to come back in here and put glass in there and then have that be a space, because the courtyards outside are really nice spaces, and that could be an extra learning environment for your students. And I talked about Sharpster and also the history and the stories that each of your schools tell. Potrero obviously has a real warm spot in everyone's heart in the district. It's really a nice place, and what a great gift to those students that that go to that campus and the tremendous resources that they have within that facility. And maybe there's more ways that you could take advantage of the fitness facilities and the larger classrooms and computer center and a number of those things. And then your foods program and your district food center, which is amazing, and it's an amazing facility and a great resource. And gosh, those students that are interested in the culinary arts, I mean, what a great place to have a internship or exploration and just take advantage of that. And then I talked about Columbia before and that connection to the courthouse. Obviously there's an element there that you want to keep out of the school, and there's an element that that you want to have kids have sort of a positive side of that, that might want to learn about law and justice, but maybe they can also learn about things that they don't want to have happen in their lives. So there really are some incredible facilities and the places that you. Actually, these are sketches that we developed for Rick for his new building. That actually initially the kids wanted to have a human body that you would walk through and sort of visualize, and we drew pictures of that, and it was a little morbid, and so we came up with the idea for the lunch shelter as a blue whale that would give you a sense of the history and the size of things. And then the opportunities to work with the high school district, and I think just having that connection with the high school, even a stronger connection. I know you obviously have a strong connection right now, but having a stronger connection with the high school so that students can visit there. They can become more familiar. They're also more comfortable once they go there. Because your environment, especially your K-8 schools, are very neighborhood friendly schools, and I'm sure it's pretty intimidating, that first day you go off to high school. So the more they can become familiar with that, and maybe they are excited about some resources in the career programs or fitness or sports or music or whatever it is a great opportunity. Yeah, that's the new look at Arroyo. So. Didn't look like that when they were our arch rivals. So. But they, really some nice spaces there.